Welcome back to another podcast on Fifth Ave. Taylor Haase and Julianne Pelusi here. Excited to join you guys again. And we have a lot to talk about this week, Taylor, with, the season ramping up and Jeff Carter. Taylor's in San Jose right now. So can you tell us what you saw at practice? We're recording this on Friday. What did you see at practice? What did you see at practice that would indicate whether or not Jeff Carter gets benched for Vinny Hinostroza?
Yeah, it looks like that's going to be the case. The Penguins practiced today, Friday, in San Jose. Practiced yesterday in Cranberry too, and the line combinations they used both those practices were the same. Jeff Carter skated on an extra defense pairing with P.O. Joseph. That's an indication 99% of the time that he's, whoever's doing that is not going to play. And so
Vinny situation.
Vinny Hinostroza was the guy that got in. Then in Carter's spot on the fourth line, centered by Nola Jarry, and then Matt Nieto on the other wing. Not super surprising that they'd look to switch things up. I mean, they really didn't have the option for much of the season because they weren't carrying an extra forward. They didn't have the cap space. They were carrying 2 extra D with John Ludwig and Ryan Shea for most of it. And then, both of those guys got in. But, I mean, they didn't even have the cap space to recall a forward until Alex Nedeljkovic went on long-term IR and opened up that space. So, and then, even then after Nedeljkovic went on long-term IR, there were a couple days there where they just weren't having practices the way the schedule worked out. So Hinostroza didn't get an opportunity to even practice with the Jarry and Nieto. So it's not too surprising that he didn't get in right away. But now that they've actually had a couple days of practice, because there is a 4-day break in between games here, it looks like this is when they're going to make their move and put Hinostroza in Jeff Carter's spot.
Well, just where do you think that Carter is failing?
I don't think it's a Carter specific issue. I know he was awful last season. Everyone knows he was awful last season. He hasn't been that bad this season. It's more so just the entire fourth line with Carter, Jarry, and Nieto. They don't have any points through 9 games. They haven't been that bad though. I mean, obviously you can't go that long without scoring. You're gonna have to chip in offensively at some point here.
Maybe a little bit,
yeah. But they haven't been playing that bad. You look at the on ice, all the shares for things like shot attempts on block shot attempts, shots on goal, expected goals. For the early part of the season, they were even kind of towards the top of the, as far as all the lines go, the rankings on the Penguins, they were kind of towards the top. They were doing well. So they weren't scoring, but they were helping drive momentum. They definitely weren't giving much up. Now it has kind of fallen back down to right around 50%. So pretty much even, or maybe even a little bit below 50%. But then also, you look at the way that line is deployed, they're mostly in a defensive role. Jeff Carter at 5-on-5, only 20% of his faceoffs come in the offensive zone. He's mostly in the defensive zone. So that's not setting yourself up for a lot of offensive success. But you look at what's happening as far as shot attempts and all that while they're on the ice, and it's fairly even. Which, given their deployment and how where they're starting their shifts, that's pretty good. So I don't think it's an issue with any one of them specifically, but you had to do something just because that line's not you
right.
have to score at some point. And Hinostroza is the guy that got called up, 2 goals, 2 assists in 5 games in Wilkes-Barre. He's literally just the guy who was playing the best down there at the time. That's all it was. And he's a natural right wing. Carter was playing on the right wing. So if you're going to sit anyone, it would be Carter, even though you look at those early games. I thought Carter looked good in some of those games compared to last season, which low bar. But it just makes sense. If Hinostroza is the guy that's going to get in, you kind of have to sit Carter. So
When's the last time you got to see Hinostroza? I'm going to dip into my Sabres jar here and put some money in the Sabres jar. I covered Vinny Hinostroza in Buffalo, and I thought that if he's on the right line, he can be very productive. And he, he's that kind of gross grinder type of guy. And so what do you think that he can provide on this line? And do you feel that he can have success? And also, again, back to my first question, when's the last time you saw him play?
I mean, not on it. You know Hinostroza much better than I do. I mean, just a couple of preseason games here, but I can't say he stood out too much for me in the preseason games. I didn't get to really watch any full games of his in Wilkes-Barre of those 5 he played. Other than just some highlights. I mean, the speed is the one thing that stands out for him, and that can help for the fourth line, especially. So, we talk about the NHL, the Edge, the puck tracking data, and the skate, the Edge site that just came out?
No,
yeah,
we haven't.
We did.
Not together, no.
Because we had to skip, because you're sick. But anyway, since you and I last recorded, NHL Edge, that's what it's called. It's like the player puck tracking data came out. And so we actually have all this data of zone time and where guys are when they're on the ice. And I mean, skating is the big thing that we got out of that. And Jarry is the slowest skater on the team. That's kind of one of the main takeaways. So, taking some Hinostroza where speed is really one of his better assets and putting him on that line, that'll be huge. But that's not to say that Jeff Carter is slow. I mean, I know everyone thinks he's he's cooked, he's old, his legs aren't there. He's towards the you don't get real rankings with this Edge data. You get percentiles. And so Jeff Carter, last I looked, he was in the 75th percentile for speed bursts, and so they'll group it 18 to 20 mile an hour bursts, 20 to 22 and up. But Carter is one of the fastest skaters on the team, surprisingly. I think his top speed, at least a couple games ago.
You can see him gun it. You can see him gun it in some games.
Well,
it's just not.
I think what it is his legs aren't moving very fast, but he doesn't have to because he's so big and he has such a powerful stride that it might not look like he's really trying hard out there to he doesn't have to move his legs as fast as some of the other guys. But when he gets going, I mean, his speed is one of those things that he really hasn't lost. And I know that sounds surprising for Jeff Carter, but we have the numbers that you just can't argue with the numbers. So, but yeah, he's gonna be watching from the press box in San Jose. So, yeah.
How do you kind of analyze the Jeff Carter hate not hate? I don't like to.
No, it's hate. It's hate. It's so. We wanted to talk about this a couple weeks ago. I think even after the season opener, I think we wanted to talk about it, but we ran out of time. It's taken on a whole, it's reached a level that it has become hate. The one thing for me, if you want to criticize his play, that's fine. He was awful last season. I wrote about it a number of times, but then the way the place that some fans have taken this, it's insane. And you go back to the first training camp practice. They're using the 2 rinks at the Lemieux complex, and if you're going over to the other sheet of ice, you can either walk the long way around or you can cut. There's a little tunnel that goes under the bleachers where the fans watch. Right. And he's walking over, and fans are, it's just a couple. It's not a big thing, but there are a couple that are yelling at him, why are you still here? All that, which is crazy to do during training camp. When you have not played a game this season, and then you go to the season opener against the Blackhawks, and they're doing the player introductions, and they're going the whole roster, and they come out. Some guys are getting more cheers than others, obviously, like Erik Karlsson comes out, people go crazy. Jeff Carter comes out. Not only, I mean, so the cheers are lesser, fine. No one's making you cheer for Jeff Carter, but then he gets booed. In the season opener. No, the season opener. The regular season, the player introductions, he's getting booed. He has not played a game this season. And you see his face, because he's coming out, there's Jim Dunham, and his face does immediately drop. And I mean, you feel bad I feel bad for him. Again, he's not played a game this season. Just let him play a game, see where he's at. I thought he had a fine training camp, even the preseason. I thought he looked better. He was coming in with a good attitude. We talked at camp. He knows he played bad last season. He's not dumb. But booing him in the player introductions and the home up, that feels personal. And I mean, when his face dropped, I don't think it's necessarily his feelings because that he's worried about, because he talked, it was late last season, and someone did ask him about the external noise and whatever, and he made it clear that he doesn't care what people are saying. That's not saying he doesn't care that
one thing to say it. It's one thing to actually feel that way. And
yeah, but my thing is when you're doing this as a season opener, he has 2 young kids there. And I'm sure for him, if anything bothered him, it's that his kids are there for that. Because his kids are 6 and 7. And I'm sure if you ask his son,
remember that your memory is in ether at that point, and it's that's what's really frustrating as people who cover professional sports. And now I'm covering the NCAA football. It is hard to watch how critical people get of players. Sincerely, I get that they make their big salaries, what have you, but they're people. And then we go down to the locker room, we see their families waiting outside for them. They are real people, just like us. And, everybody has a bad day at work sometimes. And, we have our bad training camps. It is really, that is tough to watch. And you feel with Jeff Carter for that, but it seems like the Penguins are making a move, at least for now, to keep him out of the lineup.
Yeah, and I mean, to the Jeff Carter, just the fan perception point again. I see people all the time say oh, he doesn't care. He's getting his $3 million, about his play. He's over it. It's not he is not mailing it in, just collecting a paycheck. He wants to win here, and he loves Pittsburgh. I know people are oh, if they scratch enough, he'll get upset and demand a trade because he has the full no movement clause. You can't get rid of him unless he wants to. He just bought a house here. He might live here even when he's done playing. He's not going anywhere, and that's why it feels like it's kind of beating a dead horse of the Jeff Carter criticism, because it's literally impossible to move him without his consent, and we know he doesn't want to go anywhere. And until, Hinostroza came up and they actually had that extra forward, there wasn't anything that could have been done. Now there's something that can be done and he can sit. So, yeah, I mean, it's worth seeing Hinostroza, what he can add to that line.
I think it is. And after covering Vinny for a little bit, I just think he's such a shot in the arm to a dressing room. And also just on the ice, his speed, like you brought up. And I think it is worth giving it a shot. See what you have, because he doesn't do great when he's not gelling with his line. But when he's on the right line, you can see some real sparks of a sick hockey player with him. And so I think, if this line works out for him, or they can maybe kind of move him around. I know Don Granato liked to do that more than Mike Sullivan does with his young lineup, people that aren't as used to each other. But you can kind of inject him in almost anywhere, and he will, if it's the right fit for him, he performs. So that's what I got for you in the Sabres jar. popping in my money. But also, speaking of fan favorites, Tristan Jarry, not one of those right now. Do you have any kind of insight, being in the dressing room, what's going on with him and how quickly things could maybe get back to normal for him to fix everything?
He's just been inconsistent. When he comes out, puts up a shutout against the Avalanche, and then the next game he gets pulled against the Senators, like 3 goals on 9 shots. And he can't be having those nights. I mean, as far as like insight out of Tristan Jarry, that's never gonna happen. He's just the worst talker on the team. Like he just doesn't like giving anything away, really. I know people sometimes they'll watch, like the fans, they'll like watch the videos of him talking and they'll think it's maybe like apathy or him being rude. It's not that. It's just some goalies are weird, and that's kind of how he is. And he just yeah, okay. I don't getting the little bit that I've known, like Nedeljkovic and Hellberg, since they've been around, they seem like normal people. I haven't seen any like weird goalie behavior
It's
out
like
of them yet.
pitchers and goalies, man. Like it's just like.
But yeah, so Jarry, he just doesn't talk a lot. He did admit after the loss to the Ducks that he has not been up to standards. He knows he needs to be better. So he admitted that. And like you look at the advanced stats. I mean, it's again small sample sizes. We're only like a little bit into the season, but I don't like using like goals against average and save percentage because that kind of takes into account the rest of the team in front of them and like how many shots they're giving up. The better thing is goals saved above expected. And quick, like explain it like you're 5 years old. There's expected goals. That's a stat. It sounds goofy, right? Expected by whom? No. But it takes into account the quality of scoring chances. So it assigns a value to those. Like based off the probability of that, location, angle of the scoring attempt becoming a goal. So it's like if a shot from a particular point on the ice off of like a rush, off a specific angle, 10% of the time is a goal in the league. Then that's like 0.1 expected goals. The numbers are not that high. It doesn't work out quite that way. That's just like as simple as you can make it. And so then it pops out a pretty number at the end where like, oh, the expected goals in this game were like 2.58 to like 3.42. And so it's like if, everything worked out as probability, like league average, that would kind of be the score. So if the end results are way off from what the expected goals are, then that's when you can kind of use it to evaluate a goalie. So the stat for goalies would be goals saved above expected. So if like the expected goals against are 2 and Jarry lets in 1, then it would be 1 goal saved above expected. The numbers are never that clean, but to bring this all together, for those that listen through that whole explanation, Jarry's goal saved there's no easy way to like explain these stats if you're not super familiar with them, and they do have goofy names. Jarry's goals saved above expected per 60 minutes, it's minus 0.3. There have been 38 goalies in the league this season who have played at least 5 games. He ranks 35th in goals saved above expected. So that's taking into account like the actual workload he's facing and the quality of the attempts that he's facing. And it's like, how is he living up to that workload? It's taking that all into account, because then if like a team is, allowing like 50 shots a night and a goalie can be letting in a lot of goals, but if he's kind of handling it the way like at a league average goalie would, that would be reflected here. So Jarry is below expectations. The only goalies lower are Samsonov, Gustafsson, and Stuart Skinner with the Oilers. So
sounds about right.
Yeah, there's not, and it's like, then what's the answer? Jarry just needs to be better. Nedeljkovic, we saw him a little bit, and it seemed like, okay, he had a great start, and it's like, okay, he could be someone that could maybe push for, I wouldn't say maybe the starting job, like a full, like, number one, like, workload, but at least maybe like more of the, maybe closer like 50-50 starts. But he's on long-term IR, lower body injury. He's out until November 19th at the earliest, just with the long-term IR minimums. So I mean, he could be out longer than that. We don't know. He hasn't been on the ice yet, at least not that I've seen.
Right.
It is what he's doing back in Pittsburgh right now.
I
But
agree with you. That's the only, like, that is literally what this team has. That is the only solution right now, is that Tristan Jarry needs to be better.
yeah, he needs to be better. Hellberg, he is the one backing up right now. I don't think he's gonna quite push for the starting job. He had an okay relief appearance in that Ottawa game, but I mean, it's such a small sample size, and I mean, he didn't have a great year last year. I mean, both Hellberg and Nedeljkovic are coming from the Red Wings, who make a lot of goalies look bad. So I don't know. Maybe Hellberg's better than we think, but like, we're not gonna. I'm not ready to say like, okay, he's gonna take a lot of the
move. This is what's gonna work. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Penguins don't really have like back-to-backs coming up where we'll see Hellberg a lot. Now that November 19th, they play the Golden Knights that day. They're in Raleigh the night before, so that is a back-to-back. So if Ned's not ready, the backup's going to start that game November 19th, no matter what. If it's Ned or Hellberg, we'll have to wait and see. But you hope Ned gets back soon.
We're going to be right back with more on podcast on Fifth Ave. Taylor, what do we have coming up here?
Gosh, we have so much. Halloween costumes. We're going to talk about that because we missed the Halloween episode.
Taylor is annoying. Like, she literally will just text me everybody's Halloween costume, rate them, look through Instagram stories. Like, she is like this every single year. So we got to rate Halloween costumes.
This is not just pulling social media. I got the scoop from one of like a player. Like, I sat down with him.
Okay.
And I'm like, just run down the list for me,
All right. Well, stay with us. We'll be right back. Taylor's going to talk about Halloween costumes. Welcome back to Podcast on Fifth Ave. We have some fun. Taylor is obsessed with Halloween discussions, Halloween costumes. She's obsessed. We're going to get to that in just a bit, but we're going to have some more fun actually talking about a Hall of Fame discussion, potential Hall of Famers on this current Pittsburgh Penguins team. I think we have at least two bona fide Hall of Famers.
Crosby Malkin, we don't have to discuss. Like, they're Hall of Famers.
Yeah, as a defenseman, though, it is harder to get in, and there are two defensemen, Erik Karlsson, Chris Letang, that is going to be not as easy for them as it will be for Crosby and Malkin, even given the amazing things that they've done in their careers. So let's start. Gosh, do we even talk about Sid? Like, I mean,
no, Sid and Gino. I mean, Sid and Gino. No, they're like Sid and Gino. They're first ballot. Like, it's not even worth talking about. Like, there's no debate.
Yeah, and
it does come back to the defenseman, and because, like you said, it is harder for defensemen to get in. Like, I put up the numbers. In post expansion, forwards do outnumber defensemen getting in 61-25. Now, I mean, you look at a roster and there are more forwards on a roster than defensemen, but the number of forwards getting in each year is not proportionate to the actual number of forwards on a roster. So, I mean, defensemen, it is harder for them to get in. And that's why you hear, I think people for Penguins fans for a long time have called all three Hall of Famer, the core. Letang, it's not super clear cut to me. He's definitely not first ballot, I don't think. And I think you look at other defensemen who are not in the Hall of Fame as kind of like a bar. And for me, that's Sergei Gonchar. Sergei Gonchar is not in the Hall of Fame. How many years has he been retired? He's had ample opportunities. He has a cup. He has an Olympic silver medal, Olympic bronze medal, world championship silver, world
To me,
championship
that
bronze,
just feels like a crime.
and 20 seasons. So he does have the longevity.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's not in, it's not all about the cups, because it's not the NHL Hall of Fame. It's the Hockey Hall of Fame. Like the international play does play a role too. And so like Letang has like the 3 cups. That's obviously huge. He has not played for Team Canada since World Juniors. So like as an adult, he's never made the Olympics. He's never made the World Championships. Now, obviously, the World Championships, it's a little tough because he's been on some Penguins teams that have made playoff runs, and maybe he's had the opportunity to make it. And
I'm sure he has had the opportunity, but
even then,
you're deep into the postseason, and that's just not an option at the time. And also, you got to save your legs, save your body. He plays so many minutes throughout.
Yeah, but then even if it's like, okay, he should have made it that year. I mean, the fact that he's never played for Team Canada at the senior level, that's a huge knock for him. Carlson, I think, even though he doesn't have the cup, I think, you look at the individual accolades. Letang doesn't have a Norris. Carlson has 3. He does have the international accomplishments. He has an Olympic gold, World Championship silver. You look at, like the All-Star team voting, so not making the All-Star game, but like the actual voting at the end of the year. Carlson's a 5-time first team All-Star. Letang's a 2-time second team All-Star. I think Carlson will get in before Letang. If he can get a cup, that'll help his case for sure, like getting in sooner. Letang, I just don't think it's that clear cut. The 3 cups, sure. The Masterton that he just won maybe helps him a little bit too. He does have the longevity, but again, like I said, like you look at Gonchar, who he has like the international accomplishments. He was, one of the top D for so long. Gonchar was behind Lidstrom for so long too. So like it's not he wasn't going to win like a Norris. Gonchar.
Right. But that doesn't take away what he did. That doesn't take away how great of a player he was. Just because one person is consistently better than you are throughout your career, like it just it sucks. It sucks. So.
For me, yeah, Sid, Gino, locks. Sid definitely first ballot. Malkin probably first ballot. Carlson, I'll say yes, maybe not first ballot. If he can get a cup, sure, then first ballot. It also depends on who else is up, because they're maximums of how many guys can get in. So like it depends on, when these guys retire, then who else retires around that time, and who's because if they're just better players, then you can't say first ballot when there's like a limit on how many guys can get in every year. Letang, if Gonchar hasn't, let's see what happens with Gonchar. If Gonchar gets into the Hall of Fame before then like I'm much more optimistic about Letang. But I just think Letang, he might have to wait a few years, if anything.
Yeah. First ballot Halloween costume. Big T.
Oh my gosh. So we did get, like Instagram. The Penguins had their party a couple of weeks before, like 2 weeks before Halloween, just because the way the schedule worked out. And
you're
they really
I want everybody to know how annoying that you are with hockey Halloween costumes.
Well,
it's you blow up my phone with everybody's costume, and you need to dial it back maybe next year. But
Crosby's
listeners can at least benefit right now from how weird you are with Halloween costumes.
I don't care that much, but Crosby, because there's the Halloween party, and then like actually on Halloween they went like trick-or-treating. So like a couple of them repeated costumes, some of them they had second costumes.
Do you take away for a repeated costume?
No, I don't, but I sent you Crosby's, and you're like, that's Crosby? That's hilarious to me. So for people who didn't see, Raquel's wife Emily posted the group shot, and
they were funny. Actually, I needed to, like, I'm grabbing my phone next to me because I want to go through the ones we sent to each other.
So Crosby's girlfriend Kathy is in that picture, and so back at the team party, Crosby, his girlfriend, Jeff Carter, and Jeff Carter's wife, they were Talladega Nights, like race car drivers.
Yeah,
and so in this group picture from the little trick-or-treating group, you see Kathy, Crosby's girlfriend, in the Talladega Nights costume. But then next to her, there's just like a generic old man. There's just like a generic old man. It's hard to see. I can't see that. But, with the full-on mask. And I don't think it's a specific old man. It's just a generic old man. And people are like, is that Sid? And I think you look at, first of all, look, him being next to his girlfriend, that's obviously a major clue. But even without that, Crosby is extremely bow-legged. And like the way people are like asking me, is that old man Sid? And I don't know how you can look at that, see the bow-legged old man, and not immediately know who that is. But I mean, but back to the team party. So
I'm sorry, I can't look through photos that we send each other and like keep it together right now.
So we didn't get a whole lot of pictures from the team party, but so what I did the next practice, I sat down.
Crushed it though. That's where like you got to see some of the Halloween parties. So who wins for you?
Honestly,
are you saying Sid?
No. I like Raquel and his wife, what they did, but we didn't get a picture of Raquel. So what they did, they dressed as each other. So like Emily, like Raquel posted a lot of pictures of her as Raquel, as her husband. Raquel, like Raquel, had a strict no pictures policy of him in drag. Can't imagine why. But I feel like if we there were like pictures where you can see like his blonde hair on the side, his long blonde hair. I'm like, I'm sure it looks good. But we didn't get a ton of pictures, but like I did sit down with one of the players the day after the Halloween party, and I'm like, okay, can you just like go around the room and like tell me who everyone was? I'm not gonna quote you. I'm not gonna say like so and so told me this. I'm like, I just want a list. And so like he did. Okay, the funniest thing for me was I'm like, okay, what was Gino? And he's like, he was a big ketchup bottle. And I was like, what? And
I was like, it has to be Heinz, right? It could only be.
Well, here's the thing.
It would be wrong if it's not.
He said that. I'm like, was anyone mustard? Because like Malkin's like wife is in Florida right now. Because like her, their son goes to school there and all. And he's like, no, just ketchup bottle by himself. I'm like, that's funny. But then so on Halloween,
that is funnier that it's by himself too.
Well, on Halloween, Letang, I think it was Letang, posted a picture of him, Sid, and Malkin. Malkin wasn't ketchup. He was a Coke bottle, which is so funny then to me that this player just thought Malkin was ketchup the whole night, but he was a Coke bottle. It wasn't ketchup. But my favorite one, I guess you can call it a couple's costume. It didn't really work out, but so it's after practice. This was a couple weeks ago, and I stick around late to talk to P.O. Joseph about something. I can't remember what it was, but basically, I was like one of the last reporters left in the room. And like Letang and Joseph are always like some of the last ones off the ice. And so after I talked to P.O., Letang's walking out of the room and he stops and he starts saying to nobody in particular, and he's pointing at P.O. and he's like, he doesn't want to be Barbie. We're trying to figure out our costumes. He's like, I want to be Ken. I want him to be Barbie. And P.O.'s like, I don't want to be Barbie because like I don't think I'd look good in the heels. Like if P.O. can't do it authentically, he doesn't want to do it at all. But he's like, I can't.
But like all the guys were totally fine dressing in drag. Like,
but yeah, so they're going back and forth at each other in the locker room, and Pio's like, "Why can't you be Barbie?" He's like, "You have the hair," and like Letang's like, "I want to be Ken. You have to be Barbie." And then Pio's like, "I'd rather go as Tupac." And then Letang's like, "If you're Tupac, what am I?" Because obviously, not going as something together is not an option. So like they're doing that, and then so we didn't get any pictures right away from this party. So when I'm talking to the player who like goes down the list, I'm like, oh, what did Letang and P.O. end up doing? And he's like, okay. He's like, so there's a long story. I'm like, they weren't Barbie and Ken. And he's like, no. So what they settled on was Pio as Donkey Kong and Latang as a banana. But then the bananas, they order their costumes, they get delivered, and Latang doesn't like the way the banana suit fits him. Like, it's missing, I guess, like the pants that really go with it. And so the player, he told me, so what Latang does is he digs through his wife Catherine's old costumes and pulls a Wonder Woman suit and wears that. His wife's old Wonder Woman costume. Well, and then I'm like, well, then so what was P.O.? And I was like, oh, he's still in his Donkey Kong. He didn't have a backup. But I think it's so funny that Latang was so adamant that they have to go with something together. And then he didn't quite like
And then he
the
bailed.
banana.
He bailed.
Yeah, and then he bailed and left P.O.'s Donkey Kong by himself so he can dress as Wonder Woman. But yeah, that's
Well, I love Latang as Wonder Woman. So
in his wife's costume too. But yeah, I mean, there were
so tight.
Oh no, so we did get a picture of that. Yeah, it absolutely. Well, you can tell it did not. It was not made for him. But there were two independent Little Mermaid groups. Where like two groups formed independently to go as like Little Mermaid. Ryan Graves, he was King Triton. His girlfriend, fiance, I don't know what she is. She was Ursula. But then Brian Russ,
really good. That was
Ryan.
Really
good. I saw pictures before. People are sharing them on Twitter. Graves and his girlfriend go all out every year. But Rust was also Ursula, and he fully committed with like the purple paint, and, like the drag eyebrows.
Mm-hmm.
And then Chad Ruida was like his Little Mermaid, which was very funny to me too. There were a lot of guys in drag. You could ban the pride tape. You can't stop half the team from dressing in drag at the Halloween party. And they did.
And now you can't take away the pride tape anymore. Yeah. So,
yeah.
Taylor, this is why there's something wrong with you. How much you've analyzed.
It's always funny every year.
It is really funny, and like hockey always does it best. Like, you look at like NFL Halloween costumes. They just it's not as good. It's not as good, and they like hockey does best.
I love the team videos where like someone will do it every Halloween where like they'll scare players walking into the rink that day.
Oh, did you see Ryan Reeves?
Yeah. The Leafs have done it a couple times. That was very good. But yeah, I love that. The Penguins should do that. But it is tough because like the Penguins, the way they walk into the rink, you can go like either way. So it's hard to like catch everyone coming in at the same time.
Well, they did. I saw when the Leafs posted it with Revo, they like put a sign like use this door only. And then he was like in like I think he was in a U-Haul box.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I'm trying to think like who would want to scare guys or like who would be good at it. Honestly, like maybe
would want to, but would be bad at it.
Who?
Sid would want to, but would not be good at it.
I think Sid would be amused by it. I don't know if he'd want to be the scarer himself. I'd have to think about that. I don't know if I don't feel like
that's like a Marc Andre job.
Oh, 100%. They just don't have anyone like that right now. So
yeah, they don't have somebody to fill your car with packing peanuts. Anyways,
well, they did that to Pio Joseph like last year. So, but it was Jason Zucker. That's the other thing. Zucker's gone. But we've talked too long about Halloween.
Yeah, we're done with Halloween. I'm done with you talking about Halloween. So we're going to take a break. We'll be right back with more podcasts on Fifth Ave. We are going to take a little bit of a turn here. We're going to be talking about Adam Johnson and what his former teammates have had to say about him. Just an absolute tragedy in the hockey world, and we can't not address it. So we'll be right back. And welcome back to podcast on Fifth Ave. We have some not fun news to talk about, some really painful news to talk about. Taylor, you covered Adam Johnson for a long time. He died at 29 years old this past week after he was cut with a skate blade. And it's something that we need to discuss because of neck guards and also just the person that Adam Johnson was, and you got to know covering him as long as you did. What is the most lasting impact he made on you while you covered him?
I mean, the thing that stands out the most for me that you kind of have to remember is for Adam Johnson is his, so he was in the organization 3 years from 27 to 2020. He was an undrafted free agent signing out of Minnesota Duluth. I remember, so like he came to that development camp in 2017, and as a sophomore, a lot of times if you see guys sign out of college early, it's rare that they leave as a sophomore, but he was just that much of a standout that he earned a contract. And his skating was evident from that first development camp, I remember. And I mean, when he was in the system, he was definitely the fastest prospect they had. Might have been the fastest player they had in the system at all. But you remember, so he's from Hibbing, Minnesota, small town in Minnesota, big hockey community. And his one and only NHL goal was scored in Minnesota on the road. And that's something that, I remember in the video of like his reaction, and he got the like MVP helmet back then. It's like a firefighter helmet, and he gets the firefighter helmet. But like I remember his whole, Sid gave it to him. But yeah, his whole line was great that game. I remember it was like the story. They won like 7-4. And he played, it was him, Blandisi, and Lafferty. And they combined for 3 goals. Each of them scored. It's, as like a person, very quiet, but a dry sense of humor. And he was someone that always had his teammates laughing when he would speak up. So if people didn't read it, I did write a story. It was like Monday of I did talk to like a lot of guys who played with Adam, just like sharing their memories. A couple guys like who are now on the Penguins, like the big team, just asked for their memories, and a lot of them it's like talking about that game in Minnesota that they remember. Like Sid talked about Letang, Russ, the guys that were around for that. But then so I talked to more of the guys in Wilkes-Barre who were around him a little bit more. And yeah, it's that dry sense of humor. Guys bring up a couple of guys are sharing like funny memories of like one-liners he'd have. His like one-liners, that was a big thing. So I talked to Teddy Bluger. He was down there with Adam a lot in Wilkes-Barre, and the two he brought up that like he was thinking of. So Wilkes-Barre's captain back then, Garrett Wilson, tough guy. He was like one of their best players down there, but he was also huge, and he'd fight, and he's physical and all that. And Johnson, I talked to Johnson a lot when he was in Wilkes-Barre, and the thing with him always was like he was skinny and he was like trying to put on weight. And I mean, so Jamie Devan was another player I talked to too, and he actually said they used to call him the accountant just because I'm like, why? He's like, because he was built like an accountant, but he'd go out there and like fly around. But anyway, so like Teddy's story is like he said like most games they'd be in the locker room like beforehand, and Adam would just like shake his head at Garrett Wilson and be like, I could beat the wheels off of you. Which is like just funny, just knowing like how each of them were as players.
But like probably not.
But like just to get the guys laughing. And then the other one was training camp in 2019. So the Penguins had Galchenyuk, and Teddy says like they're all sitting in like the sauna, just chatting, and I mean and Johnson, he's messing with Galchenyuk, but he's like, were you ever drafted? And Galchenyuk obviously was a number 3 overall pick, but like just to like screw with him like that, those kinds of things. Something that Teddy and Devan both brought up So I talked to them back to back on the phone, and Teddy starts telling me the story of like this player they had that was obsessed with his car, like to like a weird level. And like Johnson messing with the car, but like I was like, well, who is the player? And he's like, oh, I don't know if I want to put that out there. But then I talked to like Dejan like right after, and Dejan is like, so Joseph Cramarosa was really obsessed with his car, and like as I'm on the phone with Devan, like I shoot Teddy a text, and I was like, was it Kramer? Is that who you were talking about? And he's like, how'd you know? And I was like, well, Devan, just but so yeah, it's the same story. Kramer was weirdly like obsessed with his car, and he goes to his car. I think it was like after practice, and like the windshield wipers in the mirror and a lot of stuff on the outside he just messed with. And then he goes into the security cam like footage at the rink, and he sees Devan said the video is hilarious. That like Johnson, he's by himself. He just like walks past it, stops, does like a 180, looks at it, and then like turns around and just goes screws with the car, and then just like keeps walking. And like Cramarosa, with the security footage, like found this and like is taking screenshots and like saying it around, so to let everyone know he found out who it was. But I mean, but beyond like the sense of humor and all that, Teddy said Johnson, he was like brutally honest, like didn't sugarcoat anything, which is where he got a lot of his like one-liners from. But it also had him be like a good go-to guy just to talk to if we were like for like advice, or guys just needing to vent. Teddy said, like one guy on those teams lost his like his father, and Johnson, I think it was Kevin Churchman. I think Kevin Churchman's the only guy who lost a dad he didn't tell me who, but I think it was Churchman. And he said Adam Johnson was like one of the guys who he went to first and was just like really there for him to talk to. And like I knew Johnson fairly well from all those. This is back when I was writing books, various stories like once a week, and he was like one of the best guys down there. So I got to talk to him a lot. And there were only a couple of guys during those years where I knew them well enough where when they did get the first NHL call up, that I knew them well enough to like shoot him a text and be like, hey, can I talk to you like now? Like before, you go to the rink tomorrow and everyone else talks to you. And so I get that like little like one-on-one, and the two guys I remember who I did that for their debut, it was Teddy and then Adam Johnson. So like Adam Johnson, his debut came in Nashville, and so we got the call up to Wilkes-Barre. He had to go to Nashville that night. Then the game was the next morning, and I'm sure for him, he gets that call up.
You have a million other things to think about.
Yeah.
You're calling your family, you're calling your friends, you're calling your girlfriend, you're calling, everybody in your life, and getting people tickets. Like there's so much. And also you're about to go play a game, like your first NHL game. So like for him the way that he responded to you and wanted to make sure that you got that story first and you had that loyalty says so much about him.
Yeah. I remember I did go back and read that story that I wrote, and he was like, because I asked if he was like nervous, and he was like nervous he wasn't gonna be able to sleep that night. Just like the excitement. So yeah, I mean, I like the tributes teams have been doing. The Penguins, they did that like the video that was really well done. I really loved what the Ontario Reign did. So like after Adam left, he did go to Sweden, then he came back. He played for the Ontario Reign in the AHL, then Lehigh Valley in the AHL, and then the Panther in the DEL in Germany, and then the Nottingham Panthers in England. But so Ontario, the Ontario Reign, that's the Kings affiliate. They the next day named him like the #1 star of the game, and just like put his jersey at center ice, and then everyone who like played with him during those, everyone who's still on the roster who played with him came out and like gave it like a tap. But awful. But I mean, if there's one, I don't know if it's positive to come out of it, but like it's definitely affecting real change across all of
Yeah.
hockey. I mean, because this is like the biggest story in sports the past, week or so. I mean, it's worldwide.
Yeah.
There's people who don't care about hockey at all. They know about this. But I mean, one thing that's happening is like the net guards.
Players.
Yeah, like I know
Mm-hmm.
the next day, the elite ice hockey league, that's the British league where he was playing. They're mandating net guards for all players. It's not until like the end of December, just because there's like supply issues right now, just because it wasn't super popular for guys to wear before, but they're mandating it. So over in North America, Canadian Major Junior, the OHL and QMJHL already did mandate it. They've had it for years. The WHL was the last of the leagues that didn't have it, and they did mandate it this week. Hockey Canada already had it mandated for like youth players. It's not mandated for USA Hockey. I mean, so like something Pio Joseph talked about is because we're talking about like our guys going to start wearing it in the NHL. And he's like, if you're Canadian, you grew up wearing it, so like you should be used to it. But the NHL can't mandate anything like that without kind of having talks with the NHLPA first. So we're not going to see the NHL do anything right away. But so what the Penguins are doing, the Penguins did mandate it for Wheeling and Wilkes-Barre, both their affiliates. We're recording this Friday. Wilkes-Barre's playing right now. They're all wearing net guards, so like they came in right away. We saw Thursday's practice, a couple Penguins start testing them out. That was Graves, Eller, Carlson, and Pettersson. Not sure if anyone's going to wear them in a game yet. I mean, part of that is that it's like a supply issue. You have to get them. There's different kinds. There's like the detachable kind that like it's its own thing. I've read that I guess those can be a little bit more uncomfortable and maybe they are more prone to coming off. But something some companies make it's just kind of like a turtleneck. So there's like a Kevlar neck.
Yeah, I saw TJ Oshie advertising that I think last week before this situation. He was just advertising that.
Because he owns a company.
Yeah, it looks more comfortable.
He's wearing it.
Players would be more prone to wear. To me,
he's wearing it in a game. Either tonight or yesterday. The Capitals played and he wore because then that does offer wrist protection too. Because you go back to like Evander Kane getting his wrist like
that was a scary situation too. Yeah.
So that's something that they're looking at too. Like because then that's important. So it remains to be seen. Like I guess how the NHL Penguins are going to handle it. Might get a little more clarification Saturday. See if guys start wearing it in games. I'd imagine it takes some time for guys to like test out what kind they want to wear, and we might see it grow over time. But I mean, yeah, you start mandating it like for the guys in Wilkes-Barre and Wheeling, then they just keep it on once they come up. If you start with the junior leagues and all the junior league guys wearing it, maybe it becomes more of a thing they're just comfortable with. But I mean, why not? Especially if it's like the like undershirt, like turtleneck kind. Where you get that like dual protection and it's more comfortable. The thing I've seen a lot of players talking about when they're like talking, about whether or not we'll see this become more of a thing. They're like, oh, you got to sacrifice the cool factor, but it's worth it. I'm like, turtlenecks are cool. They look cool. Wayne Gretzky wore a turtleneck like his whole career. You think Wayne Gretzky wasn't cool? Mario wore a turtleneck. When he was covering, that was for like the chemo like scars. It wasn't like a neck protection thing, but turtlenecks are cool as hell. Just it's not sacrificing anything.
I'm your turtleneck, yeah, and I totally agree with that. It's different than wearing a cage. I know a lot of hockey players have told me, like, when they wear a cage, like it's harder to catch your breath, and also it's just like in the way of your vision. And most of these guys, they don't care about getting rocked in the face with a puck. But this is so much more of obviously that has been a problem with people not wearing a cage. That player in Russia died, and but this is just so much more life or death of a situation that I think we're going to see guys across the league really start to wear these if I were a betting person.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it'll get to a point where everyone's wearing them. I mean, what like people, I think it'll eventually get to the point where it is mandated. Maybe they do grandfather it in. I mean, just like with shields, like just the half like visors, that used to not be mandated. They're
Right.
grandfathering it in. So like, there's some people who don't have to. But I mean, we're almost at the point where everyone who has come into the league is wearing those visors, and I'm sure if you go back to like the 90s or whatever, and you tell people like, hey, they're gonna mandate visors, they're like, oh, but now it's so normal. I mean,
Yeah.
goalies used to not wear masks. Like, it's just
that's insane. Insane.
I know, and I'm sure if you go back to
but
like
we're talking about hockey players here, so like
yeah, but I'm sure if you go back to the 50s and you're like, look at what goalies are wearing now, they think it's crazy, but it just becomes so normal. So I think the neck guards it's going to be it's going to be the same kind of feeling, and everyone's going to be wearing them eventually. So, and I've seen like fans talking about, oh, maybe I've seen a couple fans calling it like an overreaction. Like, oh, it's one thing, but like, how many people have to die before you make the change?
it just happens. This happens.
And it's not like
it's not just on an NHL level. It happens, everywhere in hockey, and especially like you're thinking about like youth hockey, like kids don't have that immediate access to medical care if something like this happens. So it's really, I think it's something that the players and like the NHLPA are going to be smart enough to maybe not enforce it right away, but to start normalizing. Let's wear some neck guards. Like, let's take care of ourselves. So
there's a high school player who died from a skate to the neck. It was like 2 years ago. So it's not like Adam Johnson's the first. I mean, and even in like the NHL, you go back to like Malarchuk and Zednik are two guys who have had very severe like neck cuts from skates. I mean, and they lived. They also got immediate medical attention. I know like Malarchuk, it's the story of him is like the trainer at the time was like a Vietnam vet, knew exactly what to do. And it's like, if he hadn't gotten there right away, then maybe it could have turned out much more tragic. The stuff I was reading about like what happened to Adam Johnson in England, it sounds like they were slow getting like actual paramedics out to him. But looking at like this, how severe that cut was, I don't know if it
so fast, so severe,
I mean, the video was going around. If you haven't seen the video, definitely don't watch it. I saw that. So but this happened Saturday. It happened like, so the injury happened like 3:30 our time. I became aware of it at like 4. People are just saying like, oh, former Penguin Adam Johnson cut in the neck in England. It's like, oh, yikes. Put like a quick little thing up on the site and like, oh, update when we have it. I spent like all Saturday, like that game, like looking for updates. So like people are sharing the video. You came across it, and then like I watched it. It's like, this is worse than Malarchuk.
I can't get it out of my head.
Yeah,
I just can't get it out of my head, and it does seem like they could have. I think if it were the NHL, they would have had faster care.
Yeah,
it's he tried to skate off the ice to save himself, and that was the worst part to kind of grapple. Like, he knew what was going on. I don't even but
I mean, the last thing I want to talk about with this, the actual play that led to it himself. So I've seen a lot of people blaming. I don't want to name the guy because I don't want to send people his way. The Sheffield Steelers defenseman. There's been a ton of people acting like it was intentional, like attacking him like it was intentional. And you've seen a lot of players come out, some like of Johnson's current teammates, to be like, this is it's a hockey play gone wrong. So people who haven't seen the video, a Sheffield defenseman is skating and he's going for a hip check on Adam. And he clips one of the Nottingham Panthers players on the way in. And he kind of so he starts falling. And when you're falling forward like that, your leg's like a counter.
You're not used to seeing that so much on the ice.
Yeah, so when you're falling forward like that, like your leg's like a counterbalance. It just went up behind him. I've seen like a lot of people saying like, oh, I've been watching hockey 55 years and playing longer. What, they gotta throw out their credentials. They're like, I've never seen a leg come up that high. And it's like there's countless examples. In the NHL, they just typically aren't that tragic. I mean, like Zednik was cut by Olli Jokinen, his own teammate, falling forward. He like just got clipped and fell forward, and your leg flies up like that. You go back. I mean, it's not that uncommon of a thing. And typically you're just not making contact with other players. But Ryan Graves, 2 years ago, Nathan McKinnon was in front of him, falling forward. His back leg goes up, hits him in the face. Scary moment. Could have been so much worse. But then you have like the more of the Nottingham Panthers, like Johnson's team, coming out and like defending him, like defending the Sheffield players, saying like, we are behind him. This is someone who needs our support, because he was just the other half of a tragic accident. Weston McCoud, I don't know how to say it. He said, he's like, I was right there on the bench, like meters away from where this happened. He said, it's clear to me his actions were unintentional. Anyone suggesting otherwise is mistaken. And then the other player who has spoken out about it, Victor Bjorking, he did an interview with the Swedish outlet Expressen. He said, I don't understand how some people can behave like towards him. It's inhuman. He said, I've texted him and have expressed how I feel about everything, and I support him. No one in our team thinks it's his fault. Quite the opposite. We stand behind him. We're a big family. And so then the interviewer asked him, like, what do you want to say to those who claim it was a deliberate act by the player? And he says, they can go to hell, quite frankly. It's so insane that people think it's deliberate. Check the video. You'll see that it's an accident. Two skates collide right before. It's so damn fast. There's no chance it's deliberate. What I can say to those who believe otherwise is to listen to the people who were there, those who saw it in real time. I was a couple of meters away. So if anyone has experienced it as it really was, then it was me. And again, we're the people who are arguing against these players are seeing a very grainy video, a recording from far away. And I just think it's insane that, like the Nottingham players, like they're dealing with a lot of grief and they have to take time to come out and defend the Sheffield players, because people are so insane about this. And yeah, I don't know. I've seen some like Wilkes guys who played with Johnson and Wilkes-Barre, and like they're sharing things too, being like going after the Sheffield players, not the right move. But yeah, it's sad, and you feel sad for him too. Because it is.
Yeah, you do, and it's just also it's hard not to think about that other player that we're not going to name, and also just like I mean, just all week long, you can't stop thinking like about Adam Johnson's family. Just having to see this, having the video posted out there, and all of that, you just your heart breaks for them, and just hopefully something can happen in the NHL to protect players more, that something like this doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we love you all, and thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Podcast on Fifth Ave. We'll be back next week with you. Take good care.